Welcome to Exceptional Circumstances for Exceptional Learners. My name is Rebecca Muller, and I am humbly performing, discussing, talking with you all after having done over 40 episodes since last year. So this is a full year that we've been meeting and talking and communicating online. It has been an absolute thrill. And what I'm so excited about is that this community is growing. And when we sit down to really think about what the purpose is, why we continue to meet after hours, why do we continue to have these conversations? And so much of it stems from our passion in education, but also just from a genuine care for the students. So as the finale of ECEL for this series, I just thought it would be so great to talk to a student. So many times we think about student voice as being so important, but sometimes we talk about the theory and we don't actually stop and sit with a student and talk to them about what their experience has been like. I think sometimes we do it in our own course, but I think it's great to kind of spread out and talk to kids from around the nation who all experience something so unique. Hopefully it's a once in a lifetime deal that we all did our remote learning and hybrid and whatever other modality we've been through. But this was definitely a year of learning, and I hope that you are all taking this time for some reflection to really see what were the lessons learned over the past year. So before we get started and really get to speak to a student who I know you are all going to just be enamored with, I just wanted to take a moment and thank some of the people that show up consistently each week. So a big shout out to Emily and Deb, who have been consistently here through many shows. As well as our new subscribers. So we currently have 5 on the calendar. So I want to also have a shout out to Allison and Carrie, as well as Julie, for having me on their calendars and always and wanting to be a part of this. So I thank you so much, as well as Kim and Maddie, who was a student from I'm Determined, who continued to show up each week and really give us a lot to think about. For July, I'm going to continue to send out a monthly newsletter. So while we won't be having shows each week, know that I'm thinking about this group and we are looking for ways to expand and really meet the needs. So thank you to those who filled out this survey. But in July, take a look. There are some conferences happening in July, including Thrive in Special Ed. Being run by a viewer of ECEL, but she is also running a free series, and I would love for you to be a part of that. I will send that out in the newsletter. There is a teacher reboot that is going to happen through Educators to Educators. There is additionally the Council for Exceptional Children will have their Special Education Legislative Summit, which will help you to connect to your local CEC chapter and become an advocate and really know the numbers and the things that we have to fight for. So if you want any additional information from that, if you're not receiving the newsletter yet, please let me know. Put a comment on the Facebook Live or email me at educator@muller@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to set you up with that. But without any more delay, I'm just so excited about tonight. This has been a thought that has kind of spurred since like January, February. How do you take this year and really end strong with something that matters? And there's nothing more that matters than speaking directly to a student. So with that said, I'm going to introduce to you, this is Alex. Alex attends school at a suburban public school in Massachusetts, frequents the theater, as well as many other amazing activities, and is defined as duly exceptional. So Alex, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what it means for you to be duly exceptional.
So hi, yeah, my name is Alex, and just a little bit about me. I love doing theater. I love acting. I love working with children, like teaching, things like that. I'm also in my TV media course, which basically you make videos and make news every week or every month. And I think I would define it as, at least for me, being very strong in some aspects. For example, for me, it would probably be like communication and vocabulary, and being kind of on the weak side for other things, such as for me would be like organization and quick learning speeds in school.
Right. And I mean, I think it's important to say that everybody has a different rate at which they learn, but it seems like in certain ways in school, we're almost like forced into having to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so let's talk about that. So this entire year you were remote, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so knowing that communication was strong for you, but some of that other getting things done timelines is something that you struggle with. What was it like during remote learning for you?
It was a lot of emailing, my teachers, because, normally I would just raise my hand in class or just like wait a couple minutes after class. It was kind of hard to do that on Zoom. So I sent a lot of emails, even with like one sentence, just clarifying things or getting things checked on. So that was fine, but it was a little harder to like get on top of it right after the matter. Like say I had math and I had a question just about like one of the formulas, and then I didn't really have the chance to like get on my computer, pull up the email and write like a good morning, everything before my next class, rather than, just checking in with the teacher being like, hey, is that how that formula works? Yes, cool. And then, move on to
right. And something that we talked about was how in a regular class setting, if anybody asks a question, everybody gets to hear the response.
Right. And then on Zoom, you don't really, usually the teacher, at least in my experience, mutes themselves when like you're supposed to be doing independent work. But in real life, you can't really mute yourself. So if I'm kind of confused on the subject or anything like that, I kind of wait to do my independent work until I hear like someone say something that, even if someone asks a question that's not my question, hearing the teacher explain something gives me more, not only time to process it, but more material to work with so that I can comprehend what's going on the paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, true for so and many of us, right? And sometimes I know some of the kids would put a question in the chat, but it might
Right.
not be to the whole class. So people don't know what they're thinking and if they're on the right track. And I think
Right.
that's a really important thing. Because I know that you said that there was additional times for you to meet with teachers. I forget what you
Yeah.
called them. They weren't, was it flex time or
Flex block. Yeah.
flex block? So,
Yeah. There was more time there.
but talk to me about what that looked like for you to go to a flex.
It was kind of like weird. I don't really, because usually, so we had another time before virtual learning where like if I just wanted to stop by my like French room or whatever, I could be on my way down, like out, check in and be like, hey, pages are 65 and 67. Okay, see you tomorrow, and then walk down. But with like on virtual, like some of my teachers required an appointment,
Right.
and so I'd have to be like, do I have time to get biology help today? I don't really know. And like sometimes when I would go in, they would be like, I'm gonna put you in a waiting room, I'll come see you when I'm done with this student. And so I'm just kind of sitting there but staring at myself like, what am I doing right now? Which was
Right.
kind of weird.
Yeah, there was a lot of wait time. There was a lot of silence. I know for me, I can't wait to go back into a building and have the hustle and the bustle of
Yeah.
people running around, just the ambient noise that
Yeah.
I never thought I would miss. I really miss.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so now this was your junior year.
Yes.
Okay. So you're going in next year as a senior.
Yes.
And as far as you know, is it going to be in person?
Yes.
Okay. So is that a breath of fresh air?
Yes, mostly fresh air, also along with some nervousness, but
Oh, of course. Of course. Um, so what I guess was the most important thing you learned, not material wise biology, but what did you learn about yourself during remote learning? What were some of the things that you can kind of take away and be like, that was interesting?
I think I definitely learned how important like calendars and schedules are, and like because I realized that like taking like that 2 seconds to put something in your calendar or your schedule or anything like that, or just writing or putting it somewhere is worth it, because I found myself forgetting like the little things. Like I wouldn't forget to go to class, I wouldn't forget those kind of things, but I would forget like little things like, oh, I wanted to ask my teacher about this thing, or oh, I wanted to get I don't know, something like that. Like and I really learned that like this year to put those things down, and then once I do them I can just delete them, but I've been much more like on top of my stuff.
And what did you primarily use? Was it like Google Calendar? Did you have to
I
create
use
your own, or what was that
well
system like?
yeah, I like Google Calendar, but at the same time, like it was weird because I wanted a space to put like things I had to do, but like only for academics, and I feel like the calendar was more of just like my life. And so
I know that
I
feeling.
yeah, so I made a Google document with like this table, and I put like how you get like planners where you can like write. I hated those because they were so small. I don't know how
Yeah.
you're supposed to put all of your homework in there. Um, so I made my own planner. So I had each subject, um, and then I had the subjects here, and then Monday, through Friday, and then in each like box I would put homework as well as like little notes. Like I didn't like put a lot of detail. I was just like flex block bio, just like I need to go there, or
Right.
question about question about page 7 or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know for me, my system had to change about 12 times this year because we
Yeah.
were here, we were in our homes, then we were half in the building,
Right.
and some of the people came in. And
Yeah.
creating that system is so important. And it's, I think, for students, I feel like it's really important for students to find something that works for them. A
Right.
lot of times we say you have to write in
Right.
a planner and we put it in an
Yeah.
IEP goal, and then
Right.
the kid's like, well, that doesn't work. Well, then we got to change it. So what were some of the ways, or like, did you have any systems or things that you tried that didn't work? And then
Yeah.
how did you know that it wasn't working?
A lot of things I'd say didn't work for me. Like, for instance, I know this wasn't this year, but it had some relevance. I
Sure.
think in like 7th grade or 8th grade we had these binder checks. They were it was the thing I was least looking forward to every time, because my teacher and wanted everything in a certain order, and everything to be like perfectly in there. And I remember I would always do horribly on them. And but what I did learn from that teacher is that having a system is important, but I learned that system was not my system. So
Yeah.
so I usually, with my binders now, I just put like usually like the least important stuff in the back, and then I put stuff that I kind of use in the middle, and then stuff I use a lot in the front. And so that instead of having it by date, that confuses me, or alphabet, that makes no sense to me. But I like it. I like my convenience because it makes the most sense to me.
And that's what's important, right? It has to make
Yeah.
sense to you, because it could make sense to me, and then I
Yeah.
could teach it to you, and you're like, it doesn't work for me. That's okay. But then
Yeah.
we have to have different things in the toolbox to help us navigate that. Like for me,
Right.
I loved the folders with the little clasps.
All right. Yeah.
What I would do is I would put loose leaf in there, because I hated the binders, because then I would have to get the reinforcements, those little stickers. They would end up on my hand and in my hair, and I couldn't stand them. So I would get the 3-prong folders, put loose leaf in there for notes for practice. And then what you just said, it's like a binder, but then all my worksheets and handouts were either like, I did like a done, not done pile, or important to, least important. And like, I've tried to share that with my students. I'm like, look, this worked for me. This was great. Cause then I didn't have, my backpack, and wasn't as heavy, because those binders are pretty bulky.
Yeah.
And for some kids it worked, and for some kids it didn't. And guess what?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I do think that for the educators listening, maybe we want to rethink some of our systems that we have really been stringent on, that it has to be a certain way. It's good to have that structure to teach kids. Right. But if you have somebody who understands how they think, or can kind of help them, it's important to be flexible.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's important. I actually just recently learned about like my writing. Like, I always got told, you put in your graphic organizer, like it would always be, here's the writing assignment, put it in your graphic organizer, like right now. And I would always be like, I like the graphic organizer because it gave me organization in my brain. But the hard thing was I didn't have anything to organize, because my brain would be empty. And I realized when I started writing for like fun, that it takes me like 3 to 4 days after knowing the assignment to be ready to write it. Like, for instance, I was like writing letters like in 5th grade, for an assignment. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like due tomorrow. So I said, can I have an extension? And so then like 3 days later, not in the middle of the night, but it was like 9:30, I was like, I know what I'm writing. And I wrote everything in like 10 minutes. And obviously I edited, but it was one of my best writings in elementary school, and I learned that that's what I need to do in order to, and for essays, it's similar, I just do the same thing. And then when I think of it, I put it in some sort of graphic organizer and then I write it. It's a longer process, but it makes more sense to me than just trying to put something on a graphic organizer because I've been told all my life to put it in a graphic organizer.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, it's a fact, there's so many different kinds. So as a teacher, we try to share all the different kinds, but I think the piece that we miss, or that it's not said explicitly enough, is I'm showing you all of these ways so that you can find the one that fits for you, so that you can use it moving on.
Right.
I could never do the outlines with the Roman numerals and it the right way. And I had a 7th grade teacher that was the way we had to do all our notes. And if we didn't have the Roman numerals correct, when it was the lowercase, thinking about it, I can feel my heart racing. My hands feel a little sweaty. That's how anxiety inducing that was, because I knew that red pen or whatever pen was going to come out, because I could do it with little dashes or little stars or something like that. But when it came to having that lineup, just didn't work in my head. I'm very visual. I like to see pictures. I'm more of a mind map person where I have a center and things branch out. And I think the piece that you bring about, saying that it takes you like a couple days to just think on it. And that doesn't mean you're procrastinating or that, definitely not, and saying this about you, but I've heard colleagues like, oh, they're just being lazy. They don't care about the assignment. And while sometimes I think there's some things that you would prefer to do something else, I have yet to find a student that wants to do poorly on purpose.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten told from a teacher in the past that I'm not like working hard enough. And I realized that people showing how hard they work is very different, because what I think is my teacher didn't see me in class always writing notes, always, doing this, doing that. It was because I got more out of, because it was in a different language, I got more out of listening and soaking everything in, and then going to bed that night, having everything, and then waking up. And that's usually how I learned more of the conjugations rather than writing down each thing. It was just me just listening, because I couldn't take anything in if I was just writing every single thing down.
Right. And so when you're thinking about the processes of the brain, what is going in versus what is going out, if you're spending more time on the output, that sponge doesn't have time to absorb the information.
And ideally, like I would ask for like, oh, can I have a note? Can I have a copy of the notes? It was really helpful virtually, because I would be like, hey, can I have that slideshow? Because usually like in like a class, I would pay attention to the slideshow. Everyone would be taking notes, and I'm like, oh, I should be taking notes, but I would pay attention to the slideshow. I would talk to the teacher separately. Hey, can I have that slideshow? So if I can't remember something, or I would have both of those things, because I'd have everything in my brain that and then I'd also have that slideshow.
That's something that I hope doesn't go away even for professional development. When teachers go and there's all this wonderful information, it's like, hey, are you going to share that? Because I need to go back, because this is just so much, so fast. And I think too, this online format, we have so many more distractions. Yes. You get a pop-up, like right now, my cell phone, there was a message that came up and I was distracted. And we have almost had to rewire our brain, no matter what level we were functioning at before, there's this new level of distraction that you almost have to mindfully figure out what your system is and when you're going to check messages, because it could take over your life.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
now, how has the social media influence, has that gotten in the way of anything with school for you, or do you stay out of it?
Well, I'd say for like distraction wise, like I've been trying to explain this to like peers and family, where at school I seem to be less distracted but more uncomfortable, and then at home I'm more comfortable but more distracted. And I think that's because, I feel comfortable in my home, and it's weird because, in my room there's usually no noise or anything, and at school, someone's drilling somewhere, and everything's going on.
It's always the lawnmower.
Yeah. And so I find that funny, and I think I realized that, as you said earlier, the ambient noise really helped me with my focus, and the different, I guess, like different like sensory things of, I realized that, at a desk, even though it's really bad for my back, the feeling of like, my arm on this, and feel like that triggers me into like school mode. That kind of like feeling of the desk, the walking in the door, the bell, stuff like that, it really helps me get into the mode. So like I got distracted by everything. Like you can ask any of my friends or anything, like I would just be like, oh, there's a snowplow out there, and then they're talking about the Revolutionary War, and I'm just, outside in my brain, because there's so much, like, since there's not much going on, I focus on the little things that are happening, and it was so much harder to focus all my time on the computer, because I can't look at, even if I'm watching a show, I can't look at the screen the whole time. I just can't. I just am looking this way and that way, and I sometimes seems as like, I'm not paying attention, but I try my best to pay attention. I'm paying attention most of the time, but it's really hard to virtually, and I don't know the exact reason, but I think it has to do with that, like distractions and the level of comfort and the sense of being like at school.
Yeah, no, I think that is a very valid point. I will say I was the same way with television. What we did is we put the closed captions on. Right. So now I'm watching it, but I'm also reading. So I feel like I'm doing something else. I don't fall asleep as much now. It has been such a great accommodation, because my husband's like, you can't sit and watch anything, because I'd be like, oh, I got this to do. Oh, there's something else. Oh, right.
Yeah.
When you have a busy life, there's always something else to do, but it's really important to have times to kind of focus. It seems like for you, that thing to focus and to really get that joy, it's not sitting and watching TV, but it's being with others, specifically in the arts, the theater. So so talk to me about what that looked like for the past year for you. Was that in person? Was that remote?
So one of the shows I did was remote. I did it in this room, and I collected all the stuff from school, and then we rehearsed and performed live on Skype, I think.
Okay.
It was strange, but I had a fun time. It was nice having my backstage be my kitchen, but but then, I was in another show, 2 other shows, I think. Yeah. And they were both, well, one of them was filmed, but pretty much all of our rehearsals were in person. And, we were like have masks, apart, all that stuff. And I was wary of it, because I don't really trust most of the kids my age with like masks and stuff. They're getting better, I think, hopefully. But yeah, so we did rehearsal there, and then we filmed it, and then that was the show. And then my most recent show was live, and I was on the stage with the mask, and that was great. I said to my cast, I was like, that I missed that so much. Like, I love being on stage. I said to them before the show, I can just stand on stage for an hour by myself, no one in the audience, and entertain myself the whole time.
That's awesome. So it's definitely a passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you get the theater bug, you don't get it until you don't understand it until you've been bit. Once you're bit, especially that first showing, you're like, we're not ready. That's never going to work. And then you go out there and it's just things just fall into place, and you almost go into like a zone where
yes.
You're performing because you practiced it, but like you're just rolling, and then at the end when everybody's clapping, oh my God, you're making me miss the stage. I miss it so much. That's so wonderful. But that's and so do you have any plans for theater this summer?
Not for this summer, but definitely for next year. I'm gonna try out the same shows, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe be a director for playwrights next year. So
yeah, it's amazing. I could definitely see you in that role as director. But what other things have you been involved in? Because it sounds like you spent a lot of time on academics and really trying to get things to work and taking your time and etc. And then you did the theater, which is a ton of time.
Right.
Don't tell me there's more on that list.
There is. I am in my TV group. I'm going to be major 3, so the highest level, and that takes up a lot of time. But, this past year took up a lot of time too, which basically meant, my people would text me and be like, hey, Alex, can you film this on this time? And I'd be like, maybe. And then I'd try to do it, I would produce a video, I would do the preparing for it, the actual filming and the editing with other people. I would produce one of those every month, in addition to school and theater. And, that sounds like a lot. And, but it's because when I'm on the computer, doing school, I get exhausted, multiplied times 2. Because I think because of the screen, so it takes me a while to recharge, and so by the time I recharge, then I do my homework, and then the day's over.
Yeah.
And so then I'm just I want to go to sleep,
But do you find that being active in the other things, because I hear sometimes that if you're not doing all the academics, you got to get rid of the extracurriculars. And that's never sat well with myself.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I'm able to balance those, but I do know people who, one of my friends, they do a lot in the tech stuff with theater. That's literally all they do. Yeah. And they've shared with me that sometimes they're up late, they sometimes don't turn in academic things. But what I've realized from patterns, the more they do this tech stuff, the better they do in the classes. They moved up a couple levels since last year because they've done more tech stuff.
Right.
And I'm just they're doing what they love, but at the same time, it's not they're what, schools by,
Right. Yeah, I think it's about striking a balance.
Yeah.
Some of the students that I see that are involved in at least one thing, not 12, when sometimes that happens too, but when you have at least one thing that just makes going to school worth it. It also helps with your social circles, and it just helps you to kind of not make everything about work, right? But they say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? So you want to make sure that there is a balance. And I think sometimes students that may struggle a little bit in school, feel like they don't have the right, or they can, or they should really just go to the after school for math because they're, and then that just creates more anxiety.
Right.
And then I find you could spend every week after school getting ready for that math test. And if you do nothing else that sparks joy or makes you feel calm, you take that math test and your brain goes into fight or flight, anxiety raises, and everything that you practice just goes out the door. And so I really think that it's important to find things that make you, not everybody has to love math,
right?
But there's something out there that will bring you joy. And I have a lot of students that play video games. It doesn't sound like you have a lot of time for that.
Not really. I mean, sometimes I do, but I usually just, talk to my friends, and that's usually my leisure time.
Yeah. And that's another thing that, like, that's great, but I really think being involved in something at the school.
Yes, I agree.
Just connecting through texting or through screens, that camaraderie, that the problem solving that goes into when you're on stage and somebody drops a line and everybody kind of looks at one another and you feel like time has frozen and the audience has no clue that you just missed the line. Those are things that you can't teach in a book.
Right. I think it's really important for every student, just to get in something, just like at our school, it's a thing where you tell freshmen, just join something, join anything, even if you think you're horrible at it, join, whatever, because even if you're not great at the activity or whatever, you're gonna meet people, and then maybe you'll learn that you like something else from that, and then you'll join the club that's about that thing. Just joining something is really important.
And also, if it's not there, you can always create it, right? If you're looking for
true.
something or some, like, I know a lot of schools have clubs that kids, I know in middle school, when I taught at the middle school, I had a bunch of students who really liked Doctor Who, and they found out that I was a fan, and they said, hey, can you advise the Doctor Who club? And I said, all right, it sounds good. Fridays. What kid wants to stay at school on Friday afternoons? Well, there was about 20, and they would come and we would have a blast, and we would talk and philosophize about the show, and then watch a show and have popcorn, and we just had a great time. It was a really great way to end the week. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. I too, it was like, yes, it's Friday and I get to see this awesome crew. And I think for teachers too, for the teachers out there, getting involved, yes, there's a lot of grading and lesson planning, but when you can be involved in specifically a student club, my social justice group this past year was just so incredible because the kids really cared. And when I felt like I wanted to throw the towel in and like, I'm done with remote learning and hybrid, they were the ones that picked me up. And I think it was very much a reciprocal feeling, because there were days where they were down and they had a place to go. And so we had a group meet chat, we had the meetings, and it was just really nice to have that. And I think for students and for teachers, you have to feel a part of a community to make it worthwhile. So I love that advice, and I know you're doing great things. I have a question for you though.
Yes.
If you could reinvent school, clean slate,
right?
What does it look like for you?
That's a big question.
It is.
I mean, first of all, I think definitely being very picky about the like staff, everyone from like the custodians to, the teacher, like that's really what like makes school.
Yeah.
And, I've had my fair share of great teachers, amazing teachers, but I've also had my fair share of not so good teachers. And I know that's life, but if I had to reinvent it, I would make sure that, you know, that each teacher was there to make each student's lives better and have them learn, but also be aware of their happiness and their well-being rather than just the academics. I think that would be my number one.
Yes.
And then next, I mean, I know this is hard. I don't know how people do it, but with the scheduling, I think my school made blocks longer, which I do not like at all. I think they should be shorter because I have trouble paying attention that long, and probably students with like attention problems have even a harder time paying attention for that long. So I would make that shorter. I would make lunch longer. Lunch is too short, because give the fact that like, so if you're gonna buy lunch and you're on the 4th floor, first of all, you have to wait for your teacher to dismiss you, walk all the way down, get in line to get your lunch, pick your lunch, check out your lunch, find a place to sit. And the time you start eating, there's 2 more minutes left of lunch, and then you have to also weigh in the time that you have to go back to your next class. Mm-hmm. So I think those would be the main things. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I think those would be the main things.
The fact that you said it's the people that make the schools. Yeah. I just want to pull that out and shout that out loud. It is. It's the people. You could have the best curriculum and everything on paper could look incredible. But if you don't have the right people talking directly to the kids that understand their backgrounds and who they are, I mean, there's so much that we can take from that statement. And the fact that that was the first thing, you're like, yeah, I just want my teachers to make students' lives better and be aware of their happiness and well-being, not to make them happy,
right,
but to be aware and to know how to cultivate that, and to not just be like, oh, flag, you're going to the office, right. I don't know what to do. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, definitely. Like the other 1 year, I had this teacher who did. That teacher actually made me think of that statement, because not only did they were very nice, but they also had like a couple times a week meditation, and they didn't make us meditate. They called it meditation. But, you could literally, some people were on their phones. That was their time to take a break. But the only rule was to be silent. That was the only rule. You could do whatever you wanted. Some kid was spinning in a chair, some people were asleep. And then we would just go on like we wouldn't. And I think that was such like a simple thing to take 10 minutes out of a class to do that, because that made me want to be in that class more, because I knew that teacher wanted us to do what we needed to do in order to be present at that class. Because I feel like a lot of teachers are like, I need to get all this stuff in. And, sometimes they say like, okay, I want you guys to be aware of your mental health, take care of yourself. But then they give us a bunch of homework. I think that's almost worse than saying that. I would rather them be like, here's a bunch of homework. But when they say, here, take care of yourself, but then contradict themselves, I feel kind of like it's like all like a lie. Like, why would they say that? And I think that it's really important that teachers not only focus on the academics, which are very important, but also forming a bond with the students. Because if you don't have that, and if you don't even like try that, then your students' academic performance is going to suffer along with their emotional being.
I had a professor say, you have to reach them to teach them.
Yes.
Like, that's a cute rhyme. I didn't understand it till I was in the classroom.
Right.
You brought up some amazing points. I'm loving this so much. It's, you don't want it to be performative. And I think this is a shout out to any administrator out there, because I think it comes from the top down. The people above us get a lot of stuff and they say, well, you got to check your well-being, but you're not allowed to take sick days. And if you're sick, you need to make sure that there's documentation, and we don't actually trust you that you're really sick, even though you probably are. But so there's all this stuff that comes out from the like bureaucratic stand
right.
above what the teacher has to do. So now all the paperwork and the stuff and the checklists and the stuff is on the teacher, and then we just kind of bring it down to the kids. And there is that feeling of there's not enough time. Right. But I also get that same feeling when I'm practicing for a performance on stage. There's never time.
That's true.
But you get done what you can. And when moments matter, it comes together. Right? And I think what I'm hoping that we take from this past year is we look for the moments that matter.
Right.
And push aside some of those checklists. I know for me, that's been my big aha, is what are the things that I'm going to spend more time on? Am I going to, ignore a student who's talking to me because an email came in? Or am I going to close the computer down and look at that child and be like, I'm here? It took practice, because especially because I had kids on the computer and kids in the room, and I found myself talking to the kids that were in the room from my screen. And at one point I was like, this isn't right. Like, I need to be with the people that are here.
Yeah,
and
I think that's a big thing.
You had a break. You had to say, I need to be with you right now. Or you need to break. I need to be directly with you. We're going to a breakout room, me and you. And please, if you can, turn on a camera, because that would be great. But that was a huge thing too with cameras. Was that an issue at your school? Turn on camera?
Yeah, a lot of people didn't turn them on, and a lot of the teachers were like, on one hand, I understand why teachers want cameras on. If I was a teacher, I would too, because I want to gauge the reactions. I totally get that. But at the same time, I'm thinking, there are probably some students who are just off, I don't know, ordering pizza or something. But then there are also students who need that time to, because it's not the same because like I know some teachers would be like, turning your camera on is the same as just like being in the classroom. It's not, because when I'm not sure how to explain it, but having you're in your home, you don't know what's going to go on behind you. You don't know what will go on. And also some students work better, and I feel like some people might disagree with me, while like looking at something else or doing something else. And if if your teacher sees you doing something else, they're gonna think you're not paying attention. Sometimes my friends would kind of laugh at me, but sometimes in the middle of math or whatever, I would just lie down on the floor, but it would make me pay more attention rather than just sitting there and being like, yeah. I would completely zone out like that. And I think that, and also, I think a lot of students just, I don't know, they need that I feel like they feel more safe, like learning, like having them open to learning when their camera's off, because a lot of teenagers are very self-conscious. And so I think that with their camera off, they're more free to let themselves learn and ask questions. And yeah.
You're completely correct. And I think that's where the teacher reaching out, if they notice that a certain kid is not participating. I thought that my communication with the families was great. Then the pandemic hit and I realized I could be doing this more effectively and better. An email sometimes is not enough. Sometimes it just pays to pick up the phone and say, hey, I got really into sending snail mail because I have a little bit of a online shopping obsession at the current moment. So I know how I feel when there's a package at my door. Also, throughout the pandemic, some of the people in the neighborhood would do like the ferry drop-offs where they drop off things and it was just so exciting.
Yeah.
So I did that for my kids. And I said to myself, why haven't I been doing this all along? First of all, it's fun. I get to see them in their houses and be with them for a little bit on their home turf.
Right.
I got to meet the little ones, you know, if they have younger siblings, you know, it was something that I'm going to continue to do because yes, it was more work, but that being able to have those visits brought those relationships closer.
Right.
When kids knew that they could come to me for just questions about anything. It didn't have to be math.
Right.
And I think too, sometimes when like kids doodle or something that could be them processing. So to not be so harsh when we see someone doing something else, but to have a conversation.
Right.
Hey, I noticed that like you doodle a lot. Is there something bugging you? Does that help you? Or are you doing it kind of mindlessly and you haven't thought about it yet? Well, let's talk about that.
Right.
But that involves paying attention and really being with it. And unfortunately, it's not something that everybody naturally has, but it's definitely something that we can, it's one of those things once you start to pick out things to pay attention to and you know what they are, you know, it benefits everyone. Because I know too, when I walk in, after a while, the kids go, Mrs. Muller, are you okay? Because there's nothing that I hide on this space. Like it's there and they know it. And we can say, no, you know what? I'm having a frustrating day, but I'm going to just take a couple of breaths and we're going to power through because we're human too. I think the 20th century view of the teacher that never left the school building and actually lived in the basement, that has to go away now because you've seen my house, you've seen my dog.
Right.
Everybody's been kind of in this same mode. I hope that's where we go, that everybody starts to have more of a work-life balance, that we recognize the moments. And you know, it was so great at graduation last week. I had students that I hadn't seen all year. They were just a black box and a name on Zoom. So they're coming up to me and they're giving me a huge hug. And it was like, you have a mask on. What's your name? You know, and I felt terrible, but I hadn't met them.
Right.
And they just said, like, thank you for being there. And I'm sorry, but like, just know that what you said mattered. So even when you don't think they're listening, I think we have to start recognizing that y'all do.
Yeah.
Students listen and they talk, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on after they're no longer in our presence.
Right.
And I think we need to give y'all more credit that you know who is there for the right reasons, and those that may, you know, might have gotten stuck in a job. And I wonder, you know, what does that look like? You know, there's a lot of things to be said about that. For some people, it could just be a job, but I think for many, it's a vocation and a love and a passion. And to empower those teachers to lead the way, to be able to talk to students like yourself, who can give us so much information that we might think we know, but you don't know until you ask.
Right. I think a lot of teachers just don't ask. They just I really appreciate when teachers just ask me questions that even especially when they're like, hey, I read your IEP. Is there anything else you want me to know about you or anything like that? Most of my teachers, from what I know, have not read my IEP, and or if they don't, then they could just be like, hey, I noticed you have an IEP. What kind of accommodations or anything like that? It's really helpful to know that they care about that and are paying attention to my my needs, rather than just being like, here's a bunch of teenagers in a room, I need to teach them about the World War II, and then being like, oh, well, in order for Alex to learn about World War II, it's this. In order for this person to learn about World War II, it's this.
Yeah, no, that's so important. Each kid matters and learns in a different way, at a different pace. And the way that we structure things sometimes are really rigid. And I think that has a time and a place, but not when you're learning how to learn or how you learn.
Right.
So especially in those middle years, even high school, because I have some students that sometimes I'm not sure that they're aware of the accommodations that they get. Right. And so as a special education teacher, to sit down with them like, hey, are you aware of this? Do you know that you have a meeting and let's talk about this? And I want you to be a part of the process. That's what it should be. And that's something that is definitely going to come up in next series. I have some international folks who have been looking at strength-based IEPs, which I absolutely love in theory, but have not seen it done in practice. So there's going to be some work about that. I also am currently in a study that I'm putting out. We're gathering the data, but talking about curriculum and that the most important thing in curriculum is the teacher themselves. And thank you, because you kind of reaffirmed this thought that I've been having and been working on with Dr. Jen Colito in Chicago. We've been going back and forth, and I'm excited to see the outcomes of that. But it's what you said. I think the most important thing, it's not what it is, it's who is doing it and how they're delivering the information. So more to come on that as well. Alex, I just want to thank you so much, one, for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're finally done school, and here we are, we're continuing to talk about school. And I just really appreciate that. I wish you all the best in your senior year. Lots of decisions to make, but with your understanding of yourself and knowing those strengths and finding what works for you. My advice is just don't compare yourself, because there's no one else like you. You are incredibly unique. You have persevered through so much more that, there's just so little time to speak, but I just know that those skills that you have are going to take you so far. And I appreciate your time, and you have a community here now that also supports you and raises you up as our first, hopefully one of many sessions with Student Voice. So a huge, grateful thank you to you. I also just want to take this time to thank Steve Hargadon, who opened up the world of learning revolution to me. It has been an incredible experience. I've met some incredible people who are becoming, I think, lifelong friends. So I am grateful for the chance, and we're looking to start our next series, probably not until October. Let everybody adjust to the new year of school, and we'll get back. But you'll be getting your email notifications. But there's something else that I did want to talk about for anybody out there still tuned in. I'm working with a woman in Toronto to work on some sort of wellness for educators, and we want to open it up to this community. So I may be looking for some feedback for that. That would be something that you would have a membership to and kind of be a part of the courses. I'm trying to navigate how to get professional development credits for that. So if you've done something like this before and you'd like to give some advice, I would appreciate it. But there is a lot to come, and we may or may not have a surprise guest in August. We shall see. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the wonderful conversation tonight, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. This was an absolute joy. All right.